just had to get that in. Welcome, everybody. It's Aaron Live. This is a last-second live stream, and I'm as ill-prepared as I always am. So welcome. Thank you for joining me. Good times lie ahead, we all hope. Let's see if there's anybody here. Oh, there's a few people here. Past Master Dan is the first one in the house. You know what you get for that? Nothing. But at least I didn't call you Postmaster Dan, which is something entirely different. Past Master Dan is bringing up a very important point that I don't always emphasize enough, and that is like, share, subscribe, and select all the notifications so you don't miss a stream, baby. That is right. Thank you for that. Well, he started off on the right foot and then quickly went south. So here you go, Past Master. Thanks for nothing, I guess. Okay, let's see. Is it Revens? Revens Saber was not the first one in the door. He's a little sad about that, I think. Jeff Stout's here. Kevin Thomas. Joe Bernardo saying aloha, as he always does, from the great city of Las Vegas, Nevada. Sequential Treasures is here. Bill Meachens has joined us. Keel, not Kevin, with Comics Elite. Hail, Aaron, and everyone in the chat. Welcome. You should be getting your Ghostwriter very soon. Both. Let's see. Leg Kick is here because Leg Kick is almost always here. Let's see. Okay. JP Roque is here as well. So what have I been doing lately? I've been inking page 7 of Wraith of God, which I'm just going to put the blacks in, fill in the blacks after I'm done with this, and then on to page 8 I go. The thing about Wraith of God is that I originally had a different opening, and reviewing the opening of the script and the story, I was like, this doesn't really. It sets the tone, but it didn't have enough oomph. So I added, or should say reworked, the opening. So now it's almost like an 8-page prologue. And those are sort of some of the pages I've been posting. I posted the first 5 and then a couple panels from page 6. But since that kind of deals with a fight between a werewolf and the Wraith, I don't want to, obviously don't want to give all that away. So I can't really share much more of that, but that's what I'm finishing up there. And so it's really sort of an extra pages that weren't originally planned in the script that are in there now, just to give you guys more excitement. And I think it opens the story much better and does what I need it to do. So, so I'll be wrapping that up and sending the pages off to Gabe to color those first 8 pages for me. And since we've already seen the first 5 pages in black and white, when I get the colors from Gabe, I will obviously post those and share those with everybody so you can see what the first 5 pages look like in all their glory. Not without word. I'm not going to post them with word balloons, though, because number 1, the word balloons aren't done, and number 2, then you're sort of reading it, and I don't want you to have to read the first 5 pages before you even get the book. So anyway, that's what I have in store for you. Now, you could be also asking yourself, well, what does Aaron do besides draw all the time? Well, sometimes Aaron goes on eBay and buys comic books. And I just got this, which I thought was kind of cool. This is Iron Man number 50. Nice Gil Kane cover. Once again, Gil Kane ruled the 70s. And you'll notice it has the box frame cover that I emulated in my cover B version of Wraith of God, which is available in the campaign, and kind of throw back to the old Marvel days, the Marvel 70s days, when Marvel used to do superhero comics like this. And so anyway, it's kind of interesting. I think I got this it's a near mint condition book. It's a black cover, so those are always really difficult, but there's ne'er a crease on this baby. And so it's kind of funny. If I had bought this in, I believe this is 1972. If I bought this in 1972 and hung on to it, it would have cost me 20 cents. But since I bought it, 50 years later, 60 years later, well, at least 50 years later. It's cost me $35, but hey, that's what comic collecting is all about, right? Paying a lot of money for old paper. Let's see. Well, this is interesting here. Why don't I address this with a, well, we'll do this. Aaron, what is the hardest part to you about writing, dialogue, plotting, etc.? Probably dialogue. Dialogue really makes or breaks you. You know, you can really write some really crappy dialogue, or people write really brilliant dialogue. You know, and for me, coming up with the story and plotting and pacing and stuff like that that's much easier for me. Usually, I'll come up with a story concept, and then I will. The first thing I come up with is the ending. All right, and work backwards. Because if you don't, you end up with like the TV series Lost, where you just start writing all this stuff, and then at the end you're like, oh my gosh, I dug myself a hole I can't get out of. So you always got to know where you're going, and especially if your story would have a twist on the end of it, or something like mine generally do. So I figure out where I'm going, and then I figure out how I'm going to get there, and it's much easier to work backwards when you know where you're going. Then it's easy to put in those scenes, and then you put it all together and you look at it and go, this doesn't work, this works, I need to do this needs to move here, this needs to be more developed, this is boring, and then you go back in and rework it, and then I write the dialogue along as I'm plotting, but then I'll go back in and rework dialogue and rework dialogue and rework dialogue, because you're like, do some people really talk like that? And then I'll read it out loud, because I'm such a great actor that I can give quite a performance to my own dialogue. And I should do like a what they do in bookstores, and sometimes the author come in and do a dramatic reading. That's what I should do. So then I'll go back and try and get a ear for the dialogue, and that doesn't necessarily mean that everything that someone said isn't going to sound stupid every once in a while. But thankfully, when you're reading comic books, you're repeating that dialogue in your mind and not out loud. And so sometimes dialogue that isn't necessarily as good as it could be doesn't sound quite as bad when you're reading it in your head as it does when you say it out loud. So anyway, there's the answer to that question by Leg Kick. I buy certain Batman family comics there's a couple that have really nice Kaluta covers. There's a nice one. There's a nice Starlin cover with Ragman on the cover with Batman that so I used to have some of those, and then I don't, and then I've been I have to go back and buy them again at much higher prices. I don't know. I had I had a humongous comic collection when I was probably by 1982. I'd had a pretty big size collection, mostly of stuff, obviously everything I bought since I was a kid, and old comics and stuff. But then I traded a lot of it to get a Spider-Man #2. And then when I was late 80s, well, maybe early 90s, when I first bought my very first car, I also sold a ton of my collection to get the down payment to buy my first car. And so my collection is really whittled down. But what I've done is I've gone back over the years and bought near mint copies of just about everything. So my collection is extremely high grade, and but it's it's like 1,500 books now, where it used to be probably maybe 5,000 books. So anyway. I don't know if Tuska, I don't think he inked the cover. He penciled the inside. He was the penciler on the inside. And I'm not a huge George Tuska fan, but it was okay. I just got it because of the groovy Gil Kane cover. I'm not a big Iron Man collector. Iron Man, funny thing about Iron Man, his first issue is worth a fortune. Everything else is worth nothing, with the exception of the first appearance of Thanos, which is in there. And there's also the first appearance of Moondragon, which I do have, where he's fighting the Submariner on the cover, and that's got some value to it. But most of them are not worth much, because he never really had any good villains. So I just go back, and the only Iron Man stuff I collect are like an important first appearance, if there's one in there, or a really cool Gil Kane cover, which is that, and that's why I got that. David Williams joining us and letting me know that, yes, I am a nerd, and that's okay. I've been one since I was a little kid, but what I did was, because I was also a basketball player, and I hid my comic collection in my closet in my room, right? So if I ever had girls over the house or anything like that, they didn't know anything about the whole comic book thing. So I kept my cool image intact while secretly being a nerd on the inside. Mike Fragone's here. Mike says, I'm 47 and 54. Oh, Iron Man, not I'm 47, but Iron Man 47 and 54 are other black covered books that are tough to find in high grades. That is true. I do have 47. Probably about a 9.0. And 54, I don't think no, 54 is that's the first appearance of Moondragon. Cue the dog, thank you very much. That's the first appearance of Moondragon, and I do have that in gem mint. Beauty condition. Oh my gosh. Let me close the door. Sorry. Shelly, I'm streaming. Someone just knocked on the door, so I have to go make sure that someone's not sitting out there. Yeah. Anyway. So I'm back. Sorry about that. So yeah, so 54 I think is the Moondragon issue, and I do have that. So I should say that I do have all those really cool Iron Man things in the black covers. So I've got them all the tough ones. He's going nuts downstairs. Iron Man's greatest villain called the Bottle. Oh, I get it. Yeah, because he was an alcoholic there for a while. Yeah, Mike asks a question and off I go. Yeah, I'm in the basement, Mom. Keep it down. I'm gaming. No, it's someone. This street is like the delivery capital of the world. There's constantly delivery trucks going on. Someone came by and dropped something off on the front door, and they always knock, right, to let you know they just dropped it off. And of course, that sets off the dog. Anyway, so yeah, see, there you go. David was he did the old ring and run. I think you're supposed to wait for Halloween to do that, aren't you? Let's see. Kevin's right. The repulsor rays can't fight alcoholism. It's tragic but true. Okay, so I don't normally do this on the last second live streams, but I'm going to today.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
I got these Milano dark chocolate cookies I stole from my mom's room. When they come in their own little pouch, that's quality. All right. Enough of this foolishness. Joe, I don't know. Gene Colan I always kind of like, even though his stuff was kind of funky and wonky sometimes. He's also did a good run on Daredevil. Favorite Iron Man artist? That's really interesting. Because I was growing up, it was always Tuska. When I was not, I wasn't a huge Tuska fan, but Starlin did okay in a couple issues. I know Bob Layton was kind of, kind of the guy, and John Romita Jr. for a while there. Um, I don't know. That's an excellent question, but I don't know because I'm not a huge Iron Man fan. I didn't read him that much. Taking cookies from a 9-year-old, it's like taking candy from a baby. It's true. Yeah, Byrne drew the Avengers and Perez inked him for a while there too. Man, it's a good question. I'll have to do some research on that, Joe, and get back to you on that. All right. Why not promote my own stuff? And I realized that Garbage Man, of course, who you see right behind me there, he's a monster. I should draw Garbage Man. So I'm going to draw Garbage Man. So I'm going to switch cameras. And there it is. So got some tan paper today. We'll see how that works out. Before I get started, I want to run a quick public service announcement if I can. So please remember to like and subscribe to this channel so you can get all this high quality fun and listen to me talk while I'm eating cookies. I mean, come on. Where else do you get that kind of crap? Right here, baby. Well, that's true, right? It was kind of like whatever was left on the spin rack until you got old enough to figure out what days they brought the comic books in, which was on Wednesdays. And then you befriend the person that works the counter and say, hey, when do those comic books come in? And they'll say, well, they come in Wednesday afternoon. And you go, wouldn't it be great if you let me look through that stack before you put them out on the spinner rack? And they say, sure. You look like a fine young man. And so that's what I did. Got in good with a lady that worked the Plaid Pantry. This was the name of the store that I would frequent quite often, like a 7-Eleven or something like that. And oops. And so I would go in on Wednesdays, and they'd be all sitting there in a big bundle, and she would not have put them out yet. I'd go in right after school, and I could go through the entire stack and pick out what I wanted. And then she'd put them on the rack after that. So that's the way I could get my books in mint condition and keep them that way before they got destroyed on the spinner rack. Now, by doing this, I was able to get Omega the Unknown #1. Oh, yeah. Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man #1. And see, now the thing is, back then, we had no idea what was coming out when, and so when that came out and I saw this, first thing I thought was, oh my gosh, this is going to be the next Spider-Man #1. It'll be worth a fortune. So she had like 5 copies. I tried to buy every single one of them and she wouldn't let me. She goes, we got to save some for other people. I'm like, no. So I ended up buying 3. She let me buy 3. And I kept them forever, and they're not really worth all that much. I mean, they're worth something, but certainly not like Spider-Man #1. You guys can't see that at all, can you? Well, what the heck, man? Let me see if I can get in there closer. Nope. Look at what I drew, and it was just completely invisible. Do I have to go back to my lap to get a decent Well, that's better. All right. Better angle. All right. So anyway, I would go in there and, now I never bought multiple issues, of any regular comic. It would just like the first issue came out, I would try and get multiple copies. And I remember when Nova #1 came out, and I was like, oh, this is going to be cool, and this will be the next big thing. Of course, it wasn't, but I did get my copies of Nova #1. Rising from the dirt here. Yeah. So anyway, that's my youthful comic book stories, buying off the rack, which I did pretty religiously for, I don't know, from probably about 1974 to 1970. When did I get my license? I got my license in 1980, so probably like 79 to 80. And then, of course, once I got my car and started chasing after girls, my comic buying went way down. That was all I spent my money on for, geez, like 5 years, 5 or 6 years was comics. I mean, I absolutely spent my money on nothing else. I'd go do lawnmower money and things like that, and yard work and whatever I could to raise a buck or two, and then spend them on either new comics coming out or old comics at the old bookstores that we had around Portland that would carry back issues. And that is how I built my collection. Now, unfortunately, I never got a lot of high grade books because we sort of got what we could get, right? And it wasn't until the 80s until I got some mobility and could go to comic book conventions or comic book shows in the Portland area. And then I could find higher grade books. Of course, all the books I bought off the newsstand, I did my very best to keep them in, mint condition. But a lot of times I stacked them on top of each other, and then that sort of tends to soil the spines a little bit, which or scuff the spines or soil the spines, and then kind of. So I ruined a few of my books that way, but a lot of them I kept in very nice condition. But most of the really high grade stuff I didn't start getting until the late 80s. Excuse me. Prior to that, it was just, I mean, I thought about condition, but I didn't. And I thought about, value and stuff, but it didn't really. I was more a volume guy. I was like, oh, if I could get more issues rather than higher grade, that was more important to me. But now I realize the folly of that thinking. I mean, there's still people that kind of like, they just want a lot of books and they'll get, condition isn't really that big a deal to them, but you could never really separate the value of the book from just the desire to collect it. I had to combine both those elements. I don't know if you're being sarcastic or not, but Mike says, I think you should add texture with cookie crumbs. Bill Sienkiewicz would do it. He probably would. This is like one of those. I rode my bike 5 miles to get to town. Never considered asking for that privilege. It was like, is that like why I walked backwards through the snow 6 miles to get to school every day? But I had to ride my bike, you know, not 5 miles, but it was, probably a good mile and a half or so, um, to the closest store that had a spinner rack. Bill says, I thought Dark Arc would be valuable. Me too. Actually, I did. That was one of the earliest work I did was on uh, the Dark Hawk annual. I think it was annual number one. And I got to do the cover too, which is maybe the first real cover I did. Excuse me. I like the Sphinx and other aliens introduced in the book. There was some good villains, I thought, or some interesting villains. The Sphinx. There was Diamond. No, who's the Diamond guy? It wasn't Diamond Head, was it? No, because Diamond. No, Diamond Back was the Luke Cage villain. I think it was. Was it Diamond Head? The guy who was made completely out of diamond. And there was a couple good villains in there, I thought. I have a lot of high grade issues, but maybe not the same kind you're talking about. Oh my goodness. What was the first con I went to as a fan? And was there any artist in particular that you really wanted to meet? I didn't, back in those days, the guys that I was living in Oregon, which is not the best place, uh, especially back then, to get guests because everybody was living in New York, or, because we didn't have FedEx and all that kind of stuff, right? So if you wanted to work for Marvel or DC, you had to be in the New York area to work for them. So you go into the offices and drop off your pages and things like that. And so we didn't have guests, other than maybe a local person, which, I had no clue who they were. I was a big Wrightson fan, obviously, as a kid, but Wrightson never made it to a Portland show, at least not until I was, an adult and a pro, that I ever got to meet him. My purpose for going to comic book shows was to get old comics, or find stuff that I didn't know previously was even out there, like Wrightson's Frankenstein portfolios. I had no clue those were even a thing until I saw them at a show here in Portland. And but they always had like dealers and stuff that would come from around the state, and being a again being a 12, 14, 15-year-old kid going to these shows, I was completely unaware of a golden age comic shop that existed 120 miles from me, right? And they would show up at those cons, and so you'd have some guy it was called Castle of Comics, something I can't remember. But they had all these they'd have like ECs and golden age stuff and things like that, and that I'd never actually seen in person before. And so I would with my paltry sums of cash that I had, I would attempt to buy some of those books whenever I could. Zaid's in the house. Thanks for joining us, Zaid. Thank you. Victor Thomas, bless you. What did I sneeze? Oh, thank you. Yeah. Do I consider Vampirella a monster? Pretty good looking one. There are sequential treasures. I'm hunting wabbits. Sequential treasures. Sequential treasures, says Aaron Lopresti. you did Darkhawk Annual 2, which introduced Dream Killer. It was bagged with a trading card. Trust me, I know my comics. You're right. That's exactly true. Dream Killer. I remember that. I still have a couple of pages from that laying around here someplace. Well, because Shooter probably would say that Layton double-crossed him and kind of forced him out at Valiant, and then Layton took over. I'm not saying that's what happened because I don't know. I wasn't there, but I think that's sort of the rumor mill. There's some more villains from Nova. Condor, Powerhouse, the android with no face. Yes, I dug that book. I did. It was too much of a Spider-Man ripoff, though. You know, it was the guys, Ronnie Richards, instead of, you know, Peter Parker was Spider-Man, and this guy was like Ronnie Richards or something like that, and he was a high school kid who got powers, and it was very similar to Spider-Man, obviously formula-wise, and I think they were trying to capitalize on that, and that may have been why it didn't do as well. Mid-Ohio Con, I met Stan Lee and Kevin Eastman way before cosplay. How about that? Huh. Well, so you guys were a little bit, if you were in the Midwest or East Coast, you were much more likely to meet, you know, creators than I was out here on the West Coast. True, but I drew, Benjamin, I drew Fin Fang Foom early on in October. There it is, Richard Ryder. Yeah. Is there any art you've done that you won't part with just because it struck a nerve and kind of became like a kid to you? Yeah. I try to keep some pages. I've done this before, but hey, I'll do it again. I'm not ashamed. I have a portfolio of stuff that I keep for myself. This isn't everything, but it's some things. We'll flip through it real quick, just for the sake of something to do. So yeah, I keep pages. This is from Sentinel Squad. Marvel's used this image multiple times because, quite frankly, it's a pretty powerful image of the Hulk. And I don't know if I'll ever, you know, get to a point where people consider my stuff super valuable that, you know, I'd be able to make a fortune on retirement. But so that's from Sentinel Squad. This is from that What If Avengers story I did that Jeff Parker wrote. And it's Ms. Marvel page, obviously. I just really liked the page for some reason. And this ink's by Matt Ryan. So I kept this. There's another page from that. It's a She-Hulk page. It's got some of your Avengers down there: Hawkeye, Falcon, Cap, Iron Man, Tony Stark. And it looks like Yellow Jacket, or yeah, is back there, or whatever he's called. Yeah, it's like when the She-Hulk would get like super mad and she'd Hulk out even more than what she would normally do. So I don't know. I just kind of like that first panel, so I kept it. And then this one is from the same comic, and that's Iron Man, obviously Tony Stark, and the Lion Beast. I don't know. I just liked it, so I kept it. Here's some more pages from that issue. Falcon. And I kept this one because I drew Iron Fist in there, and I figured, when am I ever going to draw Iron Fist again, right? So I kept this one, and there's the Watcher back there, and Scott Summers coming out of the shadows. But a nice Falcon right there. Let's pull out just a little bit more. And I inked this page myself, and this one which is the ending page to the story, I inked as well, so I kept it. That's from my Legends of the Dark Knight story I wrote, penciled and inked. This is the one page I kept, was Clayface, because I love Clayface. This was a double page spread from, I don't know what the heck was that? Convergence. So that's a double pager. This is actually the, and I just kept it because it has, like, you know, every freaking DC character in the world on it. This is a page from the same comic, Convergence, and I already drew this and they changed it because this is Warlord's wife and she ends up killing the bad guy, and they're like, we can't have Warlord's wife killing the bad guy. We have to have somebody better. So it was Green Lantern or somebody ended up killing her, so I had to redraw this page. Mark Morales inked that first panel, and then they were like, changed their minds. So I said, stop inking. This is a Conan story I did for Dark Horse. I actually bought this page from a Bat inked this for me, and Matt Banning. And I bought this page from him because I wanted it to keep it, and he just ended up getting it out of the split. This is inked by Rachel Dotson. This is my Stranko issue of Deadpool, so I just kept this one. There's another page that you know, I take that back. I think I inked. No, pretty sure Rachel inked that page. I inked this page though, and so I kept it just because I inked it. But it was all done like storytelling, like Stranko might do it. This page, this was a Terry Dodson thing that he got behind on it. So I did a couple pages of Excalibur, and I inked this myself, so I kept it. This is a Doctor Strange page, which I also inked myself from Excalibur. So I kept that because I figured, when am I going to get a splash page of Doctor Strange like this again, you know? Bill wants to know what this Legends of the Dark Knight. It was originally done digitally, and then they put it in a 100-page giant called, they were Legends of the Dark Knight 100-page spectacular, I think, and I want to say it's issue, it's in 2 or 3. I think it's in 3. There's also a trade paperback that it's in. Herculoids. This page was inked by Carl Kiesel. Carl actually has a Impossible Jones Kickstarter that ends in the next 48 hours. So if you're interested in checking that out, you might want to run over there and take a look at his Impossible Jones. It's kind of a cool little character that I've done some cover work for in the past for him. Metamorpho, inked by Bat. Just thought it was a cool page, so I kept it. Another Metamorpho page. This was inked by Jonathan Glapion, and I thought, well, I'm probably not going to have an issue with him inking anything again, so I kept that. Art Thibert, how about that? Inked me years ago on this. This was a Doctor Doom X-Men annual. And this is a great shot of Doctor Doom, so I kept it. This Sentinel Squad, inked by Norm Rapman, but it's Galactus. Are you kidding me? Of course I kept it. The Joker from Wonder Woman Convergence, when he becomes a vampire. And so I thought that was kind of fun, so I kept that page. Wonder Woman Conan page I liked. A couple of them, actually. Matt Ryan inks on this. I really liked the art, how this came out in this book, so I kept several pages from it. There's another one. And again, they're not, I like this figure of Wonder Woman here and that shot of her face. This is a double page spread. Doesn't have a good shot of her face, but I like the figure work and the fact that, you know, I did all these people up there in the arena. And so it's a double pager. Another Conan punching out Wonder Woman. So I kept that one. I kept this one because it's got great white on it, and I'm a big great white honk. This one I ended up redoing the bottom panels here. So this got inked And then I had to patch in some new stuff, so that's why I kept that. There's another page I kept. I love this panel where Wonder Woman's drunk, and the guy that owns the tavern is trying to pick up on her, and her tongue's sticking out because she's like, bleh. You know, she's face down drunk here on the table. So that was pretty funny. So I kept that. This is where Wonder Woman and Conan kiss, so I kept that. Big splash page of Conan driving his sword through some goblin dude's skull, so kept that. This is interesting. This is a backup story for in an X-Men comic. Danny Mickey inked it. So I kept a few pages from this. That's Sunfire, and his legs cut off. That's pretty disgusting. This is Apocalypse. There's another page from that. So those are like panel pages, and those aren't all of them, but those are some. I've still got like Wonder Woman pages and things like that I've kept. But I'll show you a few more. Why the heck not, right? So this is from Ms. Marvel, but that's like a Kirby monster called Rambu. And so I put him on there, and so I want to keep that. And then some covers from my Marvel Adventures Avengers. There's 2 of them that I kept. This is from a thing I did for Wildstorm way back called Countdown. And I just like this old dude eating pie in the foreground and the superheroes in the background, so I kept that. A couple of really nice Excalibur covers that Tim Townsend inked. Of course, a Dark Beast here, and then these characters that I all co-created with Chris Claremont that I've never seen again. Hulk versus Abomination. That was from Hulk Destruction number 4, I think. It was based on the video game, but so I kept that. And then this is covered a Metamorpho trade paperback. An unused Metamorpho. This is supposed to be number 2 because he was supposed to have his own miniseries. Then it got pushed into an anthology, so this cover never got used. This is a Garbage Man cover from a My Greatest Adventure number 1. So that's Tanga, which is Kevin Maguire's character. Then, of course, Garbage Man. And then there was Robot Man was in there as well. Mystic cover I saved because Shelley gave me all these mathematical formulas and equations to use in the cover. This one is from Legion. No, yes. I was doing covers for that for a while at DC, and I don't even know who this dude is, but the double brain, I just like the way it looks. It's got a lot of volume and power to it. So I kept that. A Superman cover to the 80-page giant, because again, it's like how often you get to draw a classic Superman, right? This was a cover from Dynamite, their new Turok series, which I kept. This was Weird Worlds number 6, Garbage Man, Lobo, and Tanga. And then I hit a Stormtrooper right there in the garbage. Just kept that. This was a Wetworks cover. But it was like a 50s take on him. I did for Wildstorm. And Mark Waid, I think, wrote that. My Power Cubed cover to number 1, Power Cube number 2, Power Cube number 3. I like how a lot of my covers have this kind of old Marvel vibe to them, right? Where you just sort of like, you have the heroes deposed in the foreground and the villains standing over them. So you're like, you know, and then his robot is just like, I mean, this isn't in the comic. but it sells the comic, or supposedly, right? And this is my Wile E. Coyote cover to Power Cube number 4. And then the Herculoids cover from Future Quest Presents number 10. And then a couple of pinups and stuff I kept. This is a Man Thing piece. This was my pitch piece for my Man Thing one shot that I was trying, or giant size man. I was trying to pitch a giant size Man Thing to Marvel, And they said they'd do it, but they never did do it. And then so I just eventually went over to DC and ended up doing Garbage Man at DC. And that's the promo piece I did for Garbage Man, which is also the banner that you see behind me. Plastic Man cover. Figure, when am I ever going to do that again? So I kept that. And then this is the Conan Wonder Woman, or Wonder Woman Conan cover that I really liked. I put a lot of work into that. And so I kept that. I mean, it's got a real nice design and slightly reminiscent of a Barry Smith Conan cover, where he's like fighting a giant bat up in the air. Pinup of Tachyon and Darkseid I did for a New Gods thing, like back in the 90s, but it just turned out well, so I kept it. The very first promo piece I did for Metamorpho miniseries, which I don't know where we were at. We were at a con, maybe in Boston, and I was on a panel, and Dan DiDio kind of was introducing some new stuff that's coming out, and so we used that as a promo piece for the slideshow. This, of course, is a cover to Damage number 14, where he fights Kongorilla. I figured, King Kong cover like that, I'm hanging on to it, baby. I kept the Martian Manhunter Marvin the Martian cover I did. Look at that big Frazetta planet in the background. Of course, I pencil and inked this. I colored it also. This is my favorite of the Death of Hawkman covers, so I kept that one with Adam Strange, then Hawkman in the back there. And then this is interesting because this is a piece I did for the comic called The Visitor for Valiant back in the late 90s. And I had Rudy Nebrez ink it. So, of course, he totally took it over, but I wanted him to, you know what I mean? That's why you let someone like Kevin Nolan or Rudy Nebrez ink your stuff, is because you basically want a piece of original artwork from them. And so he just went in and just, went totally nuts on it. And so it's really cool. And so I kept that. So those are like the prominent pieces that I've sort of hung on to. I've got Planet Hulk pages and Wonder Woman pages, not a ton of Wonder Woman pages, but a couple. And then some really choice Planet Hulk pages that I've got as well, along with some other things. But so yes, that's a very long answer, but it's kind of show and tell of stuff I've kept of my own work that maybe someday I can retire on. Art, do you want to come in? You can. I sent you a link on Facebook, so if you check your Facebook, follow the link, you can come in and pitch Black and White, baby. Oh, there he is. Ladies and gentlemen, if there's any ladies in the chat, I don't know, but if there isn't, just gentlemen then. But if there are ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the creator of Black and White, but let's welcome him in full color. It's Mr. Art Thibert. There he is.
What is up? Where's Aaron? Oh, there's his hand.
Dude, I told you I'm drawing pictures, man. That's what I do. It's all about sketching on this show.
It's all about drawing, baby. That's what we do. Hey, I found a bunch of Aaron Lopresti pages here.
Uh-oh.
I thought since you were sharing, maybe I could share.
Yeah. Well, let me give you full screen here, and you can do it upright.
Remember this thing? Let me turn this light off here.
Oh, this is the DC stuff. This was what the heck was that called? Future.
It was Career's End.
Yeah. Future's End, right? That was Frankenstein, and I don't know who those other. Was that? Oh, that was Amethyst, wasn't it? The kind of the redone Amethyst, and I don't know who the little Robin girl is. I have no idea.
Yeah, the little Incredibles girl. Yeah. Yeah, I thought you nailed it, man. I mean, they weren't giving us a lot to work with, but I thought, man, you were hitting home runs with it. Let me see. I got a bunch of others in here. I was trying to find the detective run that we did together.
Yeah,
that was. Oh, here's a page from it right here. Let me move this back here.
Oh, that's when Batman turned. Oh yeah, they gassed him up or something, right? And he turned into some or
Yeah,
the
he
guy
was
saw him as
hallucinating.
a hideous monster. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I think it
cool.
was like the Scarecrow's gas or whatever, that fear gas.
Right.
But there's yeah, I couldn't find it, but man, we did some killer stuff with Batman. It was I mean, I'm so glad I was able to do that because I always wanted to have a run on a Batman book, a detective book.
Yeah, we got like 3 issues, I think, didn't we?
Yeah, and that's it. That was like my bucket list stuff. So I'm so glad you were the penciler on it because I think your Batman is top notch.
Oh, thank you. No, those turned out really, really well. The weird thing about your inks over me is, and I have the same problem with Matt Ryan a lot of times. I look at the printed stuff, and it didn't really work for me as well. And then I see the originals, and I'm like, these are freaking awesome. Where is the translation? And I don't know if maybe it's just some of the fine line stuff dropping out, in the printing process, or the coloring not maybe necessarily doing it justice.
Yeah, maybe.
The originals on these are just fantastic.
Thanks.
This was
Yeah.
This was unfortunate because this was a Catwoman annual, and she's not dressed as Catwoman in the entire freaking
In the
annual.
entire book, yeah, it's
Oh,
horrible. Like I kept waiting for it to get better, and I'm like, oh, she's gonna beat up these thugs, and that was about it. Wasn't it like a dinner party?
yes, and I mean
And
she was in
then
a
and then
skanky dress, but
this
I'd rather.
was one of my all-time lows. I'm glad we could share this together.
Oh, was this
Solomon
Solomon
Grundy.
Grundy, right?
Yeah.
This was like a really dark, like EC issue or something. I mean, there was a lot of death and torture and things in it. It was just like a really uncomfortable book to work on, I thought.
I did too. Look at this girl. She stabs herself in the throat.
Yeah, I know. I as a penciler, you're sitting there going, how can I show this without this being just like horrific, And you're just like, and he was abused as a kid. And I'm like, what kind of comic is this? It was so depressing.
Yeah, there was some crazy stuff going on here, but look at this panel that Aaron did right here. This one right here. How fantastic! Punching that guy.
A little bit of blood coming up there, and those you see those hands, the way those hands are clawing like that. That's such a rights and influence thing. He would do that all the time. I'm such a ripoff.
So good though, but here's I mean, at least you got to do like some Swamp Thing-esque stuff, but they just kind of turned Solomon Grundy into the Swamp Thing. It was so weird.
Yeah, it was kind of that way, wasn't it? At the end, it was very bizarre.
Well, even the origin, that swamp stuff and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was oh yeah, that's right. He fell into the swamp or something and died. And we had that shot of him floating in the water, and it was like,
yeah, it was totally Swamp Thing. I was like, you already own Swamp Thing. Why are you doing this? But when we did that, was Swamp Thing still with Vertigo? Was that like DC trying to get their own Swamp Thing going?
I'm trying to place that, and I'm not. No, I think they already had Swamp Thing. I don't know. Remember they did that. They were doing it was a villains month, right?
Yeah.
They did those things with those like weird lenticular. What do they call them? Lenticular covers or something like that.
Yeah, that kind of animated.
That's what that was. But they made him more, instead of Solomon Grundy, he was more. They treated him just like he was just some sort of weird zombie monster, And
yeah,
so,
but I thought the origin, because they like retold the origin, and he was like, they killed him or something, and they threw him out into the swamp, and then somehow, like in comics, superhero comics, where you get powers or something, and then somehow
living in this, by sinking in the swamp, you get superpowers.
Remember, like it was something like that, right? So then he rises out of the swamp, and then all of a sudden he's like the Swamp Thing.
Yeah, it was. Well, he working it? Wasn't it like a slaughterhouse or something? And something went on there, and then he ended up getting dumped in the drink. And yeah, I don't know. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, because they were throwing the pig guts and stuff into the swamp.
Yeah,
you drew that little bay door or whatever it was.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just throwing stuff out there, and then they threw that guy, whoever I don't even know who it was that later became Solomon Grundy.
Right. Yeah, it was very weird. I'm not even sure how if there was some sort of like black magic going on there, that I can't remember how he became this, horrifying creature that rose out of the swamp. But
I don't remember either, but I do remember that you did that kind of Wrightson-esque Swamp Thing stopping the car.
yes.
Yeah, that was pretty badass. So that was nice. Yeah, so I still have those pages. A lot of the Batman pages have been sold, but I think I kept the one, the splash page with Clayface.
Oh yeah, that splash page, that ending shot of the last issue. Yeah.
And I think you were like how did you get that on the original art returns or something?
No, because we negotiated the split up ourselves, and I think there was a couple splash pages. There was a double page spread in there. And I think I took the double page spread and gave you the Clayface page.
I think later you regretted it though.
I always regret when I split pages because I want them all. You know, I'm greedy that way.
No, I don't blame you. I mean, for me, it was a once in a lifetime, you know, getting to do a Batman story with the talent. I think your Batman's great with the talent.
Thank you.
That you could provide, and then 3 issues on Detective. It was definitely a bucket list thing because all my career I wanted. I got a good run on Superman, but I don't have a significant run on my favorite character, Batman. I mean, you can obviously tell Batman. I got the Keaton cowl and the Catwoman, Michelle Pfeiffer cowl in the back there.
You're a Batman fanatic. Well, I'm glad that worked out the way it was. I think Mike Marks was the editor back then, wasn't he, on those?
Yeah. Is he the guy that's now? It's not Boom. What is the Aftershock?
Aftershock. That's it. Yep. It was very weird because he left DC, and I've never actually asked him about this, but he left DC, went back to Marvel. Was it Marvel for a cup of coffee, and then he was out the door at Aftershock, and I was like, it just seemed awfully weird, and I wondered if something had happened at Marvel that he got out while the getting was good. Or
I think he probably realized that the Marvel that he left was not the Marvel he was coming back to.
Could be, man. Because he wasn't there very long, and then he was gone, and but I guess he's doing okay because he's still there, and Aftershock is still publishing, right? I mean, they just did something for Graham, just wrote something for him not just a couple months ago that came out, some sort of horror title or something. So now, speaking of titles, tell us, Art, about Black and White, Volume 2, Man versus Machine.
Well, I will. Thank you. Black and White. If you like future tense stories with a lot of robot carnage, this is the book for you. So this is a sci-fi action adventure spy story. So we have a retired ex-MI10 agent. Think of James Bond, but kind of merged with robotics. Like he's kind of like, what is that character? Was the Magnus the robot fighter. So it's kind of like James Bond meets Magnus the robot fighter. So he was working with the British Secret Service. He at some point developed a conscience, and you can't really have a conscience to be a spy because you have to kill without regret. You have to obey orders without question. And so he was realizing more and more that he wasn't suited for the spy business. So in the story proper, he's trying to get a civilian life going. He's trying to, see what it's like to just be a normal Joe. And so he starts up an import-export. I thought that would be good for an ex-spy. He could use all of his knowledge of the world and everything and trade to be a successful, importer-exporter. So he hears about this great family-owned brewery in China, and so then he heads there, and he realizes it's a great product. So he wants to help this it's not really a fledgling. It's a family business that's been around. So he then develops a very strong attraction for the heiress of the brewery, which is Whitney Sung, and so she likes him as well. But I thought it would be fun to tell a story where there's this part of life that would have happened, but then something interrupts it. You know what I mean? So if her past never came back to haunt her, if this evil from long ago did not come back, then they would have had just a normal life. They probably would have started dating, hanging out. The brewery would have been a success, and that whole thing would have happened. But since it's interrupted, there's a bump in the road. This is not what's going to happen. There's going to be something else. And so then you realize that Whitney Sung is just tired of what's happening. She's tired of the law not being able to do its job. She's tired of this past coming back, time and time again to hurt her and her family. So what she does is she goes out for vengeance. So she just takes the justice into her own hands, and she just tries to eliminate this guy, just take him down. But he's not the same guy that he was in the past. He's this new guy. So he's kind of like a Bill Gates type in this reality. So he's a robotics manufacturer, tech builder. He's very, very popular with people, and also very, very successful. So she tries to just go exact justice in the only way that she feels is permanent, and that's to kill this guy. And so what ends up happening is Reed sees this and understands what's going on, that she is going to damn herself in the process, because he's done stuff like this. He's done things like this that were permanent that he's regretted. And so he doesn't want her to have those same, that same regret, that same, looking back at your life and just going, this one moment defined me for the rest of my life. I murdered this guy, and now, the rest of my life has been compromised. And so he sees this, and but he realizes that he can't just bring this guy in on his own. He's got the training, he's got the abilities, but he realizes that, one, this guy is more of a foe than even Whitney Sung realizes. This guy's going to be more of a challenge. And two, that it's not going to be satisfactory for her. It's not going to be enough for her. Like, she needs to bring this guy down. She needs to bring this guy to justice. So Reed just kind of works as like somebody that's going to help her to do what she wants to do, but not in the same way she wants, which is, death. So he basically arms a weapon, which is Whitney Sung. So she gets armor, she gets weapons, she gets all this stuff. Reed comes up with the plan. He's got the same. He's got weapons. They're non-lethal weapons. So this is kind of the beginning of the black and white form of justice. And so he thinks that she is willing to.
Is she become white?
Yeah.
Okay. So is this sort of a no? Okay. So is this kind of an origin story then of black and white?
Yeah, this is definitely the origin. So Volume 1 and Volume 2 are the two-part origin story of kind of how the team is forged and the dynamics between the two.
Okay, I got
you. So then, what you realize is that she was just placating Reed. So he gave her all this opportunity, got her in this situation that she could get close to this guy again. And then she goes back into her mode where she just wants this guy dead. And so she just forgoes the plan. She forgoes everything that they talked about. And then she literally brings the house down on them. Like, she screws up royally and almost gets them killed. So Volume 2 picks up from that point. So we get to see in Volume 2, will these two get together? Will they be able to overcome their differences? Will Whitney play well with others? Will this black and white form of justice work? All of this stuff. So that's where we start with Volume 2. And so Volume 2 is just going to be like Volume 1 was a lot of, setting up the world, setting up, the villain, the heroes, all of this stuff. But Volume 2 is just going to be pretty much nonstop action. We're going to get a little bit more into the backstory of the villain, and then it's just going to be nonstop, robot carnage pretty much after that.
So, so you obviously have long-term plans to continue this as an ongoing, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think what I'm going to do moving forward is I'm going to do one and dones. So with Black and White, I did it as 2 volumes, but I learned kind of just by doing that it's probably not good to try to do anything serialized, like an issue and then a cliffhanger and then an issue, cliffhanger kind of thing, like traditional comics.
Right.
And so when I launched Chrono Mechanics, it was a one and done. It was self-contained.
Right.
So I thought that it was better to try to do self-contained. So the problem is, how do you tell an epic tale in 48 pages or, that type of thing? So I think moving forward, I'm going to do 100-page like extravaganzas, where I can tell this whole story in one issue and then crowdfund it.
Well, that's kind of what I ended up with Wraith of God. I mean, Wraith of God is essentially a 4-issue miniseries rolled into one graphic novel. And so I could tell the story without, you don't want to feel like you're shortchanging the fans in terms of the story, but you don't want to leave them hanging for, 8 months to get the second part either.
Exactly.
So I think that's the way to go, is to kind of treat them as like, standalone graphic novels that, leave the door open for more adventures at the end of it, but give everybody sort of a self-contained story.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I think, when I started this 3 years ago, you kind of think, well, I do monthly comic books. How hard could it be to crowdfund a comic, work as an editor, work as a writer, penciler, inker, get all the vendors together, printing, all this stuff, and then crowdfund, and work on social media and try to promote. I really thought that I would be able to do that in a more timely fashion, but the reality of it just takes a lot more time.
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about with Shelley today, is like the amount of time, it takes just for promotion and doing stuff like this, so that your name stays out there and people, you stay relevant. But then also the workload of actually producing the book. And then, of course, like you said, you've got all the other stuff, managing the printer and, the people that are working for you, whether that's the colorist, the letterer, and managing those deadlines. And then, I mean, we get the pleasure, Art, of doing everything, and including editing, so it's incredibly time consuming.
Yeah.
And
I don't know about you, but I love it. You haven't got into the fulfillment part of any of that yet, and that, but I really do enjoy every aspect of it. It really just comes down to time. You know what I mean? It's like,
yes,
that's the major issue, is everything individually is fine, but then you're talking to a printer, and then you realize, oh, I just spent an hour and a half on the phone with this guy. You know what I mean? That's an hour and a half that I don't get to draw now. And so at the beginning you start thinking, oh, I can make up, this, I'll just stay up an extra hour tonight. You know what I mean? And I'll make up that hour. But then, after you do that for, 4 or 5 times that week, then you realize you're getting burnt out. So you can't do that either. So it really is a juggling act.
What have you found in terms of time-wise, having done this on a couple of projects already? What are your expectations for yourself? Because you're penciling and inking. So what are your expectations, say, per week to produce how many penciled and inked pages do you think is reasonable, or it's your goal to accomplish every week when you're working on these things?
Well, once, like I'm in campaign mode right now.
Right, but once you start working on it.
Yeah, so because I'm working right now, so I'm still trying to get as much done as I can during this funding period. But what I'm looking at is 2.5 to 3 pages a week. That's what I'm going to try to do. And I'm not sure if that's going to be pencils and inks or just straight up really tight pencils. Because what I want to do, and what I have done already, is all 64 of the pages, I'm just finishing it up now, they're all in layout form. So I have them all, in this form right here. So some of them even have black, spaces, finish. I mean, it's pretty tight. So I have the entire issue done like that in the thumbnails.
Okay.
And so then once the campaign is funded and I go in demand, then I'm going to lightbox. I'm going to either blue line these and then draw over them, like tighten it up with a graphite pencil, or I'm just going to lightbox right from these layouts, blow them up, lightbox it, and then I want to pencil the entire book. So I'd like to just sit down, stay focused, and pencil the entire book, because I've never been able to do that before. So there's always been a deadline. You work for Marvel and DC, so you usually do like a lot of pages, and then you have to get them to somebody else so that they can start working on them, and so on and so forth.
Right. Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do is kind of keep a continuity of thought going, and see if that will help with my productivity and work faster.
Right.
At least that's the idea at this point.
Well, you're inking a lot tighter than I am on Wraith of God, and what I'm trying to do is I'm doing my penciling and then inking it as I go. So I'm finishing pages as I go, as opposed to like penciling the entire project and then going back and inking the entire project. So I've never worked that way before, but it'll be interesting to see if it's how it works out time-wise, because there's a little bit of experimentation on this. You never know. I mean, obviously I've done 4-issue miniseries before, and I've done it under deadline pressure, but I've never penciled and inked an entire project like that. Other the Garbage Man, well, I know I didn't ink the Garbage Man. So the only thing I did was that Batman story for Legends of the Dark Knight that I penciled and inked, and that was 30 some pages, right? So it wasn't, and it was spread out because it was a digital release first, so there was no real deadline pressure. It was kind of like whenever you get it done, then we'll put it out. And so, but this is, I want to ship this thing in April of next year, so I do have kind of a deadline imposed on myself. And obviously, when you're doing your own project and it's a dream project, you don't want to hack it out, and I have no intention of doing that. But you still want to keep on a regular schedule so that you get the thing done, more or less when you promise to get it done.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a balancing act. I'm really not that good at it. All I can say is it's work in progress. You try something, you stick with it for a while, and then you evaluate it. Is it working? Is it not working? One thing I noticed over my career, the way I got faster at things was, for right or wrong or indifferent, you come up with a game plan of how you're going to work, and then you just commit to it every day, because the variables are what slows you down. And what happens if you have a game plan, you have a way to do things, then over weeks, months, years, you get faster.
Years.
What's that?
Hopefully it doesn't take us years to get these done, but I know what you're saying.
No, I'm just talking about like me, like learning the process.
Right.
When I was starting and trying to get to the point where I could work faster and I can get more work done, all that type of stuff. So the reason I was going like days, months, or days, weeks, months, years, is because you got it. That's the level of commitment that you have to have to see it through, because you won't see results. You won't see yourself getting that much faster in a week. You may not see yourself getting that much faster in a month. Might take 2 months, 3 months, might take a year. So don't get discouraged. Like I realized, don't get discouraged if you don't see the results quickly. It happens over time. And so before you know it, you're doing the same thing every day. You're getting faster at it and faster at it.
Right. Well, let me address a few things here in the chat. Leg Kick wants to know if I saw the Monsters Unleashed Morbius covers I messaged you Not yet, but I am familiar with them. Well, Boris did a ton of those for that Monsters Unleashed magazine back in the 70s for Marvel. A lot of those were really cool, and a lot of the zombie covers as well. How about this? Have you ever thought about doing a black and white magazine format like Marvel had with Rampaging Hulk, Monsters Unleashed, and Conan? I think about it all the time. I just question whether or not there's enough people interested in it to actually support it. But that stuff is, I love that stuff. But see, we're artists too. We look at that stuff and say, oh, this black and white stuff looks really, really cool. But does the average reader really think it's that cool? I don't know. And that's sort of the question. There's always going to be a few people that are like, oh, that'd be really cool if you did that. But are there thousands of people that feel that way, or just 20? So those are always kind of the hard things that we have to sort of balance when figuring that stuff out. Pastmaster Dan wants to know, Aaron, did you ever get that light gray marker David Brohock recommended? Yes, I did. We did it on the Sunday stream. If you didn't see that, I'm not doing it right now, but we did try that out on last Sunday's stream. Let's see. Randy Howell from way up in Canada says, Art, if you're looking for more stretch goals, how about a mini print, something that fits in the comic bag with a board? How about that?
That's what I was thinking, because we're getting to the 90K stretch goal. What I was thinking is doing it like an art contest, maybe open it up to a contest. And so whoever wins, then that artwork becomes the mini print. I know that's, like a lot of people are paying people to do the contest, but I don't have a 200,000 campaign yet.
Well, almost everything in my campaign I did myself, and I'm glad I did now, because even the times when I tried to get people to help out, something would always come up, and without getting into details, we all know the details, but it's hard to rely on somebody else when you're doing your own campaign, even if you're paying them. And I found this to be true even before any of this, independent stuff or Comicsgate stuff. When I was working at Dark Horse and I was doing my Power Cubed miniseries for them, I wanted to, I was going to ink it myself, but it was just taking too long because I was also working at DC, right? So I was doing this sort of on the side. And so I realized it took me I think 6 months to pencil and ink the first issue. And I was like, this is never going to get done if I don't bring in an inker. So I got a very small budget from Dark Horse, and I took all that money, instead of paying myself, I hired an inker, right? And then they bailed as soon as they got oh, I got a job at DC doing Batman, sorry. You know what I mean? And then and so you're like, oh, great. And you can't really blame them, but at the same time, I was like, dude, I'm paying you your full rate, and you just bailed on me. And so I don't know, relying on other people, I'm not real good at it, because you, especially on stuff like this, when you're doing independent projects, because people don't, regular professionals don't usually look at independent projects as where they want to be, because they don't see them as being visible enough. So as soon as they get an opportunity to work on, oh, I got the Spider-Man series, so sorry, I can't work on your thing anymore. Even if you're paying them full price, they're going to bail on you to do what they see as a higher profile gig almost all the time. So
yeah,
I figure it's much easier to kind of do the stuff myself. And it's like you said, then you don't have to pay anybody, right? Because depending on who you get, you might have to pay somebody $1,000 to do a pinup for you, right? And then it's like, well, geez, I could have done it myself and for free. Well, not for free, because our time is worth money, but at least you don't have money going out the door.
Yeah.
And especially as we know with these campaigns, that a ton of the money we make, it looks good on paper, but a lot of that money is going out the door for production costs and things like that.
Well, shipping, that's one thing that if I had one major complaint about this crowdfund, is that total you guys see, that has shipping included.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, there might be a third or a quarter of that amount that isn't going into anything other than shipping.
Right.
So I really think that Indiegogo and Kickstarter, they should have the shipping separate from the total, because it's really misleading, because you go, oh, well, they did 100K. Yeah, but then take 25K out of that for shipping.
Yeah, exactly. Or, um, and your platform fees, and then, like I said, there's the printing cost, and depending on how many stretch goals you're doing, all that stuff, there's printing costs associated with all those stretch goals, for the most part. And yeah, there's just, it's a, yeah. So in order for these to be successful, but I mean that we're not losing money on it, you have to hit a pretty good number, really, just to sort of break even when you start taking into account all the other costs that are involved in doing it.
Yeah.
But that there, it's a risk reward thing, right? And I think a lot of us, we've kind of come to the conclusion that this is the way to go, or because mainstream comics obviously is just melting down in a lot of ways. And guys like you and me, regardless of what our resume is or how good we may be, at some point you get a 21-year-old editor in there that's not really interested in Art or Aaron anymore, and they're looking for a new 18 to 21-year-old that they can say they discovered, and so you're out the door and someone else is in. And so it's like, I think John Byrne, I've said this before, but John Byrne put it up on his Facebook, and I thought it was really interesting. He's talking about getting aged out, right? And he was like,
Yeah.
Hey, if they'll do this to Jack Kirby and they'll do it to me, they'll do it to anybody. And it's true. They will. At some point, your lifespan in mainstream comics is over. And, I think we're probably, even if, the political environment wasn't the way it is, we'd still be facing that situation sooner than later. And so you've got to kind of look at a different avenue, and which is what we're doing with this. So.
Well, I remember this was years ago. This is San Diego Comic-Con, and I'm hanging out. This is before Jim Lee was Jim Lee. I think he was doing Alpha Flight, and I was doing Time Masters for DC. And so we went to some party, and I forget who it was, but he was sitting outside, like on on the stairs. And he was just kind of a sad sack. And then I started talking to him. He inked, you'll probably know, he inked John Buscema on Savage Sword. He was the real heavy-handed
Alcala?
Alcala, yeah. And so it was him. And so it became real apparent to Jim and I that he'd kind of aged out. Like the industry had just kind of turned on him, and that, he was just not getting work, that type of thing. So later that night, Jim and I were talking, and we were just like trying to figure out how could we ensure this wouldn't happen to us.
Right.
And so the things that we came up with was create your own IP that has legs, Rocketeer, Ninja Turtles, that type of thing.
Right.
Or create a studio, something that could exist beyond you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, that's what we started out doing. Like Hack Shack Studios, out of all those studios, this was pre-Image. It was the first. Wildstorm came after, because I remember when I was sending out, remember fax machines? I was sending out fax, and I had like the Hack Shack Studios letterhead. And so then, Wills is like, "What's that?" I go, "Well, it's a letterhead for the studio." He goes, "You got a studio?" I go, "Yeah, I got employees. I'm doing multiple projects now, blah, blah, blah." He goes, "Oh, okay." So then when he responded, the next thing I know is there's Homage Studios, letterhead coming. What's that?
No, I just laughed at because I remember the Homage or Homage Studios or whatever.
Yeah, Homage Studios. And then, it just kind of went from there. But, that was us trying to go, okay, let's create a studio. Let's create something that is going to be, that lives beyond us. It's kind of like the Kubert School or something like that, where it's your name, you build this legacy, and then it can kind of exist on its own. But, after 25, 30 years, running Hack Shack Studios, I realized it's just never going to exist without me. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
the only way the studio is going to exist is with me involved, 110%, involved, not just casually.
Right.
And so, and then about that time, I started going more like independent, like creating stuff, chrono mechanics, going back to black and white, just stuff like that. And so then, it was all based on that conversation. Like, well, create something that you own, create something, like Wraith of God, or, black and white, chrono mechanics, whatever it is, and then see where you can take that. I mean, the idea at the time was probably, Hollywood, or, where it could exist. Ooh, Le Pin.
Yeah, someone asked me what I was using, and that's one of the many pens I've used. They tend to erase off the paper a little bit. They gray out too much. So once I run these out, I'm going to stick with microns because they tend to hold onto their black.
Yeah, the Micron ink is pretty good. I think the what is it called? The Copics.
Yeah.
Are pretty decent as well.
When you're filling in blacks, when you're inking, are you doing it the old-fashioned way with a brush and a jar of ink, or are you using like markers?
Like now, I hurt my thumb and I don't really use traditional tools like I used to, because I just can't hold them the way I once did. So right. I'm kind of filling in the blacks, like I'm using the markers, so I'm kind of filling in as I go. But I still like, see how you kind of block things in. I'll still indicate like that. And then, I'll just kind of come in and start filling it as I go. And then if it's a really big area, I'll still use a brush, because it just takes too much time with the marker. And it leaves the streaks too. You get those little streak lines.
Yep. I was just curious. Well, that's interesting about the studio stuff, because I was very much the same way. I mean, I was talking to, you remember Sparta Printing in Illinois back in the day? That's where Marvel and everybody got their books printed. And when I was 18, I was calling them up and asking about, producing a comic and how much the print cost was, and all that kind of stuff. They're probably really annoyed with me, but I always had this sort of vision of, doing my own thing. And, we started a studio in the 90s called Studiosaurus, and of course personalities ran afoul, and it ended. But I've always had this kind of self-publishing gene in me, not necessarily always for comics, but just for, as I have mentioned on this stream ad nauseum, that I'm being a big Wrightson fan and Barry Smith fans growing up. Those guys were, they were working in comics, but then they went and did their own thing, or at least tried to, and were producing their own prints and their own, portfolios and different things like that they were, Barry Smith had his Gore Blimey press, and Wrightson was doing Tyrannosaurus press. And, so that was always sort of built into me as kind of, I wanted to do Spider-Man and I wanted to do some of this other stuff, but my goal was never to be doing it for 35 years. It was, because, even at a young age, like you're talking about, that at some point they're not going to want you anymore. And so you've invested all this time and effort into promoting their characters and drawing their stuff. And then you get discarded at some point, because either stylistically you've gone out of favor, or they just look at you and say, that dude's got gray hair, man. I don't want to deal with a dude with gray hair. I want to.
Well, I think part of it, I don't know if you've gotten to this point, Aaron, but that entering into a project, you realize we've done this so much that you realize how much energy you have to put into it just to make a deadline. And then you also know the reality that the deadline that you have today, which is maybe 4 weeks, you might not have it next month. You might have 3 weeks, and so then it's a constant kind of, it never ends. There's never really a weekend. There isn't like a 5-day work week and then a weekend. Like it just gets pretty daunting. And I think, for me, it wasn't like, I mean, there is the age out thing, but for me, it was more just the burnout factor. It's like, how hard are you willing to work into your 60s, into your 70s? Like there is a young man's aspect to it, because a young man wants to prove himself. A young man will take a lot of sleepless nights. You know what I mean? They'll put in the hours, they'll do whatever. But at some point, you realize, like, I've done this like for 30 years. Do I want to stay up all night to get this done? Is it worth it? Because what you have to put in and what the result is going to be. That the next day you're going to be worn out, you're going to be tired, you're going to be burnt out, and you might not be able to work as efficiently as you would have, if you didn't have to pull an all-nighter. So those things become kind of things that you're not willing to do anymore.
Yeah, and this industry post probably 1980, or maybe more into the later 80s it became a thing, but you don't get rewarded for meeting a deadline.
No.
You get penalized because, and Adam Hughes said this to me one time, and he's so right. He said, Aaron, no one's going to remember that you met the deadline. All they're going to remember is what it looks like.
Yep.
And so an editor calls you up and says, hey man, can you do this in 2 weeks? And that's not an exaggeration. We've all been in that situation, right? Where someone said, I need this issue in 2 weeks. And so then you're working 7 days a week, 10 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours a day. And you're not concerned about how good it looks. You're just concerned about getting the page done so you can get to the next page and get this thing done to help this editor out, right? So you do it, you help the editor out. It looks okay, but it doesn't look great. And then what happens? 3 months down the road, some other editor's looking at that issue, doesn't know that you had to do it in 2 weeks, and they go, wow, this guy sucks. I'm not hiring him.
Yeah.
And even sometimes the editors you help out, they look at it and say, well, yeah, this stuff isn't great. And they forget that, oh yeah, you bailed their butt out. And so now they're like, well, I'm not going to give him a big project because he's not that good. I'll just save him for a fill-in, or if I get in trouble again. And that's the reality of it, So it would have been smarter, I think, for me a lot of times to say, no, I'm just not going to do it. But then you got bills to pay, right? So it's like, turn stuff down. So it's a very unforgiving industry in a lot of ways.
Well, I've also been fired from jobs because I had to take shortcuts so I could get it done on time. So
really,
meaning that I couldn't ink every single line, that the penciler put down. So I had to take some shortcuts and go with a bigger view of the work versus, a smaller view, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly what you're saying.
Oh, that looks great, Aaron. Yeah, it looks fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so, what was his name? His name was Bill Kaplan. Do you remember that guy over at Wildstorm?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so I think he was at Marvel for a while, and it was on Backlash, and so he said, "Can you get these 3 pages done today?" And I said, "Yes, but I'll probably have to take some shortcuts." And not only did I get those pages done that day, but I also drove them to Wildstorm from Corona, California to San Diego, California. Which is a couple hours, and I handed it to Bill personally.
Yeah.
And so he was very, very appreciative. Like, yes, we made the deadline because they were going to miss the shipping. That's how far behind this book was.
Yeah.
And then, so he was all like, yeah, great job, whatever. And so then the next day, I get this call from Bill, and he said, yeah, regrettably, I have to let you go on the book. And I'm like, why? He said, because the penciler didn't like that you compromised his work.
And this was
but you said that it was going to miss shipping. You said absolutely. And he said, yeah, regrettably, I'm sorry, whatever, but this is the way it is. And so, go ahead.
No, that was just, I was just reaffirming that he forced you to do it that way, and then now you're getting punished for it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's when I was just like, you know, screw this. I mean, also try to figure out what the power structure is that you're working in.
Right.
Whether it's the editor or the artist. So who's more powerful? The imagiers, the penciler was more powerful than the editor.
Sure.
So, I should have probably got rid of my old programming because, I'm old school enough that I remember if you do a favor for an editor, they're in your corner, man. They'll go out of their way to
Right.
work with you and help you along. But that regrettably doesn't really exist in the current climate.
No, I think that all changed in the '90s. I think that old school sort of left, and I mean, I hate to blame Image for everything, but I think with that sort of Image mentality where art and became the most important thing, and how well the book looked became the most important thing, not when it came out. You would have, the editors were sort of torn because they were like, we got to make this deadline, but we still want it to look, as cool as the Image stuff. So, how do we do that? And so they would still get people to hack stuff out to get the deadlines done, but then they would not, then they would punish those people for not doing good work.
Yes.
And, that was kind of the situation I got into early on in my career. Always seemed to be like in a deadline fix with the exception of, Sludge maybe, where I first started, doing work that was of note. And, but after that, I remember, doing a couple things for Valiant, a couple things for DC, and they were always like, oh, this is a fill-in issue and we need it by this date. And so you're just like, how can I make this look really cool when I have to, get it done in, 3.5 weeks or something. It was just, and then of course you become that guy's just a journeyman artist, or that guy's just we can count on him for fill-ins, or, if you got like a second tier series that you want to keep on deadline, we'll give it to him, but you're never going to give him the Batman, or you're never going to give him, Spider-Man or something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of frustrations obviously that go into working in this industry and for other people. Because you want to be responsible and you want to help people out, and they come to you and say, man, help me out. And you do, and then you don't get rewarded for it. That's very, very frustrating.
Yeah. It's weird because, I'd been doing this, for long enough that I kind of have these moments, like I could track my career. Like, when I first started, comics wasn't where I wanted to be. Like I wanted to do illustration.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So when I got into comics, comic books was more of a way to pay the bills. I read comics when I was a kid, but I really didn't read comics as an adult. Like once I got into, like cars, girls, and rock and roll,
Right.
the comic book thing kind of went away. And it wasn't until years later when Pacific Comics came out, and there was more of adult stuff, heavy metal,
Right,
and things like that, that as an adult, I re-experienced comics, Savage Sword, the John Buscema stuff, and Roy Thomas, and, that stuff. But I really wasn't reading like Marvel and DC stuff. It was more the adult, stuff. And so I just looked at it as a paycheck early on. So it was just kind of a game to me. And I think because I had a pretty cavalier attitude, they really didn't abuse me the way they probably would have if I came like this slack-jawed kid that was like, yeah, I'll do anything you want. I mean, there was some of that I had early on, but like case in point, Mike Carlin called me and he said, I would like you to work on Superman, do finishes over Dan Jurgens. And
which was great stuff, by the way. I love them.
Thank you. But I still remember this. I said, can I call you back tomorrow? I need to think about it. And he goes, you need to think about this? He goes, I just offered you Superman. and I said, yes, please. And of course I took the job, but it blew his mind that, that was how I treated it. And so at the time, and still, Superman isn't one of my favorite characters. So if this would have been a Batman scenario, I probably wouldn't be as cavalier about it.
Right.
But I was always kind of a little bit aloof, I think, early on, and just looked at it as it was temporary. This was never where I was going to be for 40 years.
Right.
That type of thing. And so and then later, I kind of became like a mercenary, where I just kind of held out for the best gig at the best price, and I always asked for more money, every time I did it, I got a new job, and, just that type of thing. So, yeah, I think I went through like a mercenary period. And then when my daughter was born, I kind of went to I'm the corporate guy, I'm the company boy, and I'll do whatever you guys want, because I just need some kind of stability,
Right.
in my career. And boy, did that work out. That was the worst time in my career. That's when Marvel said, you're fired and you'll never work here again, and so, yeah. And now I'm just kind of like, the mainstream is the mainstream, right? They're going to do what they're going to do. And some people predict doom. Some people don't, some people like it, I guess. Some people don't. But the thing is, there's one undefined, this was so great. And you're kind of coming in now, but when, COVID hit, like a year or so ago, and then there was this whole retailers aren't opening their stores, they're hurting. Diamond, what are they going to do? Like that whole like eco structure of the industry was kind of starting to fall apart. And so I remember I was thinking, why am I not more scared? Like this in a normal scenario would have freaked me out, because I'd just be going, where's my future? The industry isn't there anymore, And
Right.
so I just went, well, I got Comicsgate, I can crowdfund. My new business model works independent of that. So the world could be burning, you know what I mean? Like the industry could be in ashes. And as long as we have the people that are watching us right now and supporting the books that we're putting out, we don't need that, and that's a lot of like confidence, like for the first time in my career, I wasn't really scared,
Yeah, that's a good point. There's always the nervousness about whenever you launch a project on crowdfunding. Obviously, you've done it many more times than I have, but you never know what you're going to get. But at the same time, you sure as heck don't know what you're going to get in the industry. Now, I was very fortunate that at DC that Dan DiDio had brought me in there, and he sort of took care of me. So when he was there, I never really worried about anything, because I knew he'd find something for me, right? But I can tell you, man, when he got let go, I was scared to death, because I was thinking, this is it, man. And it ended up,
he's your lifeline.
yeah, and he was gone, so I'm like, and it became obvious very quickly that I did not have the same cloud over there once he was gone that I had when he was there. And then the people that still I worked with that, I had good relationships with, like Brian Cunningham and some others, they all got let go in September, right? So then I was like, holy crap. Do I even know any of these people that work there anymore?
I always kid with Brian Cunningham. He looks like he should be one of the Beach Boys, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He's like a Brian Wilson type.
Yeah, he's eternally young looking, And then, but it was just so. That's when I was scared, for the first time this past year. But because I just didn't know what to expect or what I was going to do. And that's when I started exploring what you guys were up to and seeing that maybe this is a possibility, right? But so it always cracks me up when all this stuff went down and on, social media, and you went through it too as well, that people saying, oh, you're done in this industry. And I'm like, yeah, I am already done in this industry. So it's like you threatening me and saying you'll never work for Marvel or DC again is kind of like a hollow threat because he's like, yeah, duh, that's why I'm doing
Yeah,
this.
exactly. It's like when you're in school, your grade school, and they, you wear glasses, and they go, "Hey, four eyes." It's like, no shit, I wear glasses.
Yeah,
Thanks for pointing out the obvious.
yeah, exactly. So it's you never know what's going to happen. With especially with the economy and everything, and but all you can do really is kind of sort of take it one day at a time and hope for the best. Because as as challenging as it may seem to be a professional artist, in a lot of ways we're no different than any other profession, right? People can get laid off, businesses can go under without any sort of notice, and then your life can change overnight. So you know it's been I've been very fortunate to be able to do this for a living, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to do it. But there's no guarantees in life, so you do the best you can. And I mean, I remember reading about Leyendecker, who, talk about just an incredible talent, right? He had his period of time when he was doing Saturday Evening Post covers and magazine illustrations and all that kind of stuff. And he was the dude, right? And he
Yes.
was rich, and he was just making cash hand over fist. But the story goes that he ended up, dying a bit destitute, walking around New York City with his portfolio trying to get work just because his style went out. It was no longer vogue. And it's just amazing to think a guy with that much talent would ever be in that situation, but you get different editors, you get different art directors, they're looking for different things. And, suddenly you're not as appealing as you used to be. And that's, I was talking to an engineer at Rose City Comic Con, a guy who buys a lot of work from me and has over the years, and basically saying that, he was talking about the place he was at originally about getting aged out as an engineer, and so he went branched off in a new direction with a new company and was doing really well. But he was like, eventually, just in a regular paying job, you can end up be there too long and make too much money, right? And they're kind of like, yeah, we need to get rid of these guys and hire younger people that we don't have to pay as much. So it's not just comics or just art. I mean, it's something we all sort of have to face and sort of navigate around and figure out the best way to manage our careers, whatever those careers might be. So we shouldn't consider ourselves special that we get aged out, because I know it happens to a lot of people in a lot of different gigs.
Yeah, I just never want to be a statistic like that, So you do the best you can, and you try to preemptively go in the direction that is going to, or you hope that it's going to pay off, for at least the next 5 to 10 years.
Right.
Which I do think that Comicsgate has that potential for sure. And you and I have both been doing this long enough that we know that kind of trends within this industry go 8 to 10 years. Yep. So, image, just everything usually goes that way. So I'm really thinking, we work our ass off, 5, 10 years, 8, 10 years, and really leave our mark here, at Comicsgate, and then see how history, let's see how history really judges us.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing I was thinking too, as working on Wraith of God. I'm thinking, what, this should be the greatest thing I've ever done. And I'm feeling right now when I'm looking at the pages that it very well could be. When I'm done with this, I may look back and go, wow, I really knocked this out of the park. And would I have had the opportunity to do that at Marvel or DC? Probably not. I've got a few projects I can look back on and say, yeah, this really turned out well. I'm really proud of this, but not a ton. Yeah. There's stuff you did that, you're proud of the fact because you did good work on it, but it's not something that, it's not like Simonson's run on Thor or, Miller's Daredevil or something like that, or, but do you think the stuff we're doing right now has an opportunity maybe to be that to us? So people will look back on us and go, yeah, he worked at Marvel or DC for 25 years, but the stuff he did when he went independent was just next level, And so I think we have an opportunity to do that right now, which is kind of exciting, actually.
Yeah, and it's way more personally rewarding, as well, because you're actually doing what you want to do. You're drawing the characters that you've created. You're writing the characters that you've created, and what's better than that? That's your legacy. We don't own Batman, as cool as Batman is. We don't own Spider-Man. These are cool characters, but ultimately, like you said, you're just kind of another blip on, the historic radar of the runs of those books. And
Right.
also the way things are going, like there aren't even significant runs of books anymore. So the
Right.
book could just get canceled and renumbered, so your legacy just goes down the tubes.
That's right, because you may have a relevant run on a character, whatever it is, but then the next person comes and makes their relevant run, and then someone else comes and makes their relevant run, and you just, you become a footnote sort of, and maybe people that are real hardcore comic historians will go, yeah, Aaron's contribution to Wonder Woman back in, early 2000s was really significant, but no one, I, people remember Perez, and they remember, they probably remember Terry's work on the book and things like that. I don't know if mine will stand out over the test of time, but when you create something and you're the only guy who did it, people you can have, people remember it differently, probably, I would guess.
Well, like your hopes is always like that you're a Dave Stevens, the
Right.
Rocketeer guy, that you're that guy. I think the closest thing we actually have to that is Billy Tucci, just for the sheer amount of work that he's done with She.
Right.
That thing is almost iconic within the independent realm, especially as, like, it's not really a bad girl book, but it's kind of considered one, um,
Well,
kind of thing. And that's a great legacy. I
yeah.
was thinking about, like, after we did a professional show, and I was thinking, like, why do I hate Billy so much? And the reason I was thinking is because he never stopped. You know what I mean? Like, he kept putting out She books.
Yep.
He kept that thing happening. And Black and White, we had a lot of success, but then the industry started kind of crumbling and folding, in 95, 96, whenever it was. And so, I kind of, the industry just didn't support it anymore. So I went back to Marvel, because we just had our kid, so I needed that secure paycheck. But the thing is, I always regretted it, just personally, like not being able to provide for my family. Obviously, I'm very proud of that fact, and I'm thankful that I got the opportunity to do that. But somebody like Billy that just stayed, you know what I mean? He just stayed in that arena and kept putting out She books, Right, Wrong, and Different, just kept putting those books out. And now, he's got an omnibus of, like, what is it? God, how many pages is that thing? 500 pages, something like that?
I know, it's remarkable. And I just bought some plastic bags for art storage for from Bags Unlimited, I think, and they had a picture of some original comic art right in the bag. You know who it was? She.
That's funny.
They had a page from She that they were using just as the, so it's like, he's right up there with just in the comic book realm of, Eastman and Laird, and the guy who did Lady Death, and
Right.
She is extremely recognizable. And it's an independent comic, but it's transcended time and has become a part of at least the lexicon of comics. It may not, my mom might not know who the character is, but people that read comics and people that are into comics, they're well aware of that.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah, and that's like, that's my hopes moving forward. Just keep putting out these books, make them as good as I can, and just keep just trucking along. and I think that, you know, my daughter obviously is moved out. We raised her. We put her through college. You know, she's in a good place. She's got good discipline. She works her ass off. You know, she can take care of herself. So, you know, and then my wife and I, you know, we're pretty smart with the money. So, you know, we're doing okay financially. So at this point, you know, I'm thinking, not that I'm untouchable, I would never say that, but just a good place right now to be able to take these risks and chances, you know, where I don't feel like I'm being selfish. You know, you have a family, you know, as a breadwinner, you kind of sometimes feel like if you're indulgent, if I stay in this creator owned, you know, I don't know what's going to happen, you know, but if I work at Marvel, I do, you know, I'll get a steady paycheck. So you kind of give up the one for the other. And I just don't think at this moment in time, and especially since Comicsgate is still growing, I think that this is just the tip of the iceberg.
You're right.
That we're just going to keep getting better and stronger and more successful, and more opportunity, I think, is going to come our way, or we're going to create more opportunity for ourselves and each other.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And you know, so and like you said, I mean, Marvel and DC used to be something you could count on. I don't even think that's, you know, from a creator standpoint, I don't even think that's accurate anymore, right? Because we have no idea what these now that they become big corporations, or owned by big corporations, we have no idea what they're going to be doing. You know, DC may be all digital in a year and only publishing, you know, 4 or 5 titles. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
So we may be more stable doing what we're doing than a lot of the pros that are still trying to manage mainstream comics might be a year or two from now. So
well, that's the point I was trying to make when the industry, you know, with COVID and the lockdowns and all that was happening, you know, like for the first time in my career, I really felt like let Rome burn, you know, let it happen. I don't feel bad about it. I don't feel like there's some people that get very grandiose. It's like, what are you going to do to save the industry? It's like, listen, man, I'm just a freelancer doing a job. How the hell am I going to save the industry? You know, why are you even looking at like us to save the industry?
I know. Randy Howell shoots me $5. Thank you, Randy. I appreciate that very much. Says Batman is cool, but we're 21 years into a new century. Time to create new legends and not recycle the old century. Sorry, DC, you're aged out. How about that?
Yes, black and white, Wraith of God.
Now, Past Master Dan wants to know, has Art had his daily dose of salmon yet?
I smell some cooking. I smell some cooking downstairs. It could be salmon. You never know.
Oh my gosh, look at this. Past Master Dan, not bad, Low Presty, but Brohawk good, but kudos. But not Brohawk good? Okay, well, you come on my show and insult my art, you get one of these. So that's all right. That's all right. David's excellent. David is really, really good. So being second to David, I can live with that.
So is David Brohawk? Is that?
Yeah, David Brohawk Williams.
His code name.
Yeah, he had a mohawk for a while, but then he's kind of abandoned that. But anyway, here's what the Garbage Man piece I just finished looks like. I'm going to go full screen for a minute here, Art.
No problem.
So there you go. That was one of the more detailed pieces I've done, but we got to talking and I got to noodling, and what do you know?
Wow, that thing looks incredible.
No, thank you.
Is that a commission?
No, I just come on and draw, usually sketch something every time I come on, and this is Monster Month, so I've just been doing monsters. Of course, everything's for sale, Art, you know.
Oh, yeah, we have a price.
That's right. Okay, let me get that off of there. Go back to... Well, I usually wrap this up in about 2 hours, which is about where we're at. Joe Bernardo says, you guys are giving us a master class listening to you. Well, we've been around long enough. We should be able to share a few
How many years between the two of us? I'm closing in on 40. How many years do you have logged in?
Well, technically, I started in '89. So what is that? 90, it's 20, 33 years, I think.
So
33 years.
70 years or so between the two of us. That's a lot of wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. We should know what we're talking about at this point. Because if we don't, we're never going to learn.
Yeah, you know what? People should just be throwing super chats at you right now for all this wisdom.
You would think. You would think. Oh my
Or at
God.
the very least, come by and back Black and White Volume 2, Man versus Machine. We are 5 days out from closing this bad boy, and we are closing in on 80K.
You were right. You were knocking on the door at 80. Hey, Devil Flyer wants to know what you're working on. Can you show us? Can you share?
They're like my thumbnails here.
Dude, you really do tight thumbnails, man.
Yeah, so I try to get as much in there as I can, and then I ink them up. And like I said, what I'm hoping is that I can blue line them, and either like take a graphite and just draw over it real quick and finish it up, or I'll light box them.
Now, do you just ink those? Those are pretty tight. Or do you pencil them on the board when you light box them and then ink them? Or do you just ink do you blow up your layouts that you're doing right now, put them on a light table, put the board over and ink them directly? Or do you do it in pencil and then ink the boards?
Yeah, like I said, like if it's blue line, I'll probably take a graphite pencil over it and either tighten it up or fix it. Or sometimes I don't put costumes, like full costumes on the characters. So then I'll finish it up and then, I'll ink it from there. But if it's really tight and I like the layout, I won't touch it with the graphite. I'll just ink it as is, the blue lines. So it gives me an option, of things to do.
Right. Randy says, late to crowdfunding, but I backed Black and White for volumes 1 and 2. If there is stock remaining, can you add a tier to buy perks from the previous campaign? There's a 16-page bonus ash can.
I did. Some other people were asking me about that as well. I looked in the archives in the Thibert vault, and we don't have very many left. So Pamela and I talked about possibly going back to print on it, just so we could sell more than, or just, put more than 5, make available. So we just kind of ruled it out because the campaign's getting a little complicated. So you kind of want to keep things, as minimal as possible. So yeah, we wanted to do it, but we just don't have enough of the books to make it, make it happen. And we didn't want to have to print another book.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother pain in the butt too, is because people talk to me about doing a black and white or something. I'm like, well, if I add a black and white, then I'm essentially printing an entire new book that I have to deal with. And you got the printing costs and going through all that kind of rigmarole for that. And it's like, but the thing is, let me read this first. I will pronounce this Fook Google too. Says, anyone going to LA Comic-Con? Not me.
I don't live in that hellhole anymore.
That's right, man.
I got out.
Oh, hey, Clydine dropped in. She says, hi, Art.
Hey, Clydine. Hey, I just want to publicly thank you for all the care you've always taken to get me into San Diego Comic-Con. You've always taken care of me and my family. And I know when I see you at the show, I always thank you, but just publicly, man, you are one of the great, like, behind the scenes people in this industry, and you have a genuine love for it. And I don't know how involved you are with the San Diego Comic-Con anymore, but when you were there, that Artist Alley was a great place to be.
Yeah, she took care of me when I was breaking in, and took care of me for years while I was in Artist Alley before I got a booth. So yes, Clydine is one of the best. And so there you go, Clydine. We're tipping our hat to you. We thank you for all your hard work over the years. Anyway, okay, so let me, as I wrap this thing up, and so I can get back to work on the Wraith of God now that I'm done drawing Garbage Man. Art's link is in the description for his Indiegogo campaign, Black and White Volume 2, so you can go visit that. Mine's in there, Wraith of God. I put in Andy Smith as well, First Man. You want to check that out. He's in demand. Graham Noland, I put his link in there as well. He's got Alien Alamo, and that thing is closing out in just a few days. I mean, like closing, because he's almost done. So it's not going to be in demand much longer. So if you want to get a copy of that, you want to run over there and order that pretty quickly. And Arts is closing down. I assume you're going to go in demand, but you never know. So
yeah, I'm going to go in demand. Yeah. So I'm not going to
you got what, 6 days left?
5 days. 5 days left. This Monday will be the last day. So the King show on Ethan's channel is going to be a blast.
Oh,
so
that's right. We're closing out on that.
Like fire.
Yeah.
Like fire happening.
Like fire. Clydeen says, I'm still working for them. And yes, I really love comics. That's awesome. Thank you, Clydeen. Got another one. First Watch Studio. Thank you for the $4.99. I appreciate that very much. Sending you some dollars for the stories. Going to go back both campaigns today. Thanks, man. We both appreciate that very much. Because obviously, you guys, we cannot do this without your support, and we really appreciate it.
And it would be amazing. I think we're under 300 away from 80K. I think that can be done tonight.
Yeah, you're right there, knocking at the door. I'm up over 108 now, which is pretty exciting, and appreciate that. Clydeen, love you guys. Thank you, Clydeen. We love you too. And are all these on your Facebook page? I assume the links are to the campaigns. They're in the description of this video on the Facebook page. So when you see your
Facebook page.
Yeah, my Facebook page. And I linked you earlier today just on your own. So anyway, Art, thanks for dropping in. It's been a blast having somebody to talk to. It makes the time go by fast, and we always get to share stories that we wouldn't normally otherwise be doing. So thank you. And thank all of you in the chat for joining us. I'll probably be back on Friday for another last-minute live stream. And then, of course, Sunday night, I've got my regular show with Shelley. And then I think Monday night we have Comic Book Kings. I think Professionals is not happening this week because too many guys are missing. But Billy's got something going on Thursday night, so we might be dropping in on that anyway. So
yeah, Billy's gonna we're gonna party because Patrick Parnell is he closing out on his Sleepy Hollow? There's some monumental thing going on with Sleepy Hollow, so that's what Billy's gonna be doing tomorrow, and he's invited all of us to go hang out. So
cool.
That's where I'm gonna be tomorrow night.
All right. Excellent. Okay, guys, thank you so much. And we will catch you next time.